Hey everybody, this is the third video for Business Math and Calculators. Module 3 deals with arithmetic operations that involve whole numbers. So we will go through a few examples of some problems, and that'll be the focus of this video. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll walk through some sample problems. All right, here we go. With the first example problem, we'll look at addition. So it says find the sum for the following problem. And again, sum is the fancy word for the answer to an addition problem. So when you see the word sum, think addition. And so we want to take and add these two numbers together, 15,489 plus 9,476. The first thing we're going to do is go ahead and write our numbers. Rather than in horizontal form, we're going to write them vertically. And we just want to make sure that we line up our columns appropriately. So the units column needs to line up, the tens column, the hundreds, thousands, and so forth. Essentially what you do is you line them up along the right-hand side. And so that's the easiest thing to do when you go to set them up. And now that they're arranged in vertical form, we need to go ahead and start adding. So we do it one column at a time. We start at the right, we start with the units column, and we work our way towards the left. So we're going to start with the 9 and the 6, and we're just going to add those together. So 9 plus 6 is 15. Now, when we write this down, unfortunately, 15 is a two-digit number, and there isn't room for both digits when we go to write that number down. So we write the 5 down, and we carry the 1 into the next column. So I got the little red 1 there up above to show that we've carried basically 10, a value of 10 to the next column. Then we go ahead and repeat the process, and we're going to go ahead and add the next column together. So the 1 that we carried, we add in to the digits that are already there. So 1 plus 8 plus 7 is 16. Again, there's not room for both digits, so we write the 6 down and we carry the 1 to the next column. And then we repeat the process. So now we're going to do 1 plus 4 plus 4. This time we get just 9, which is a single digit, so we can write that down. We don't have to worry about carrying. And then we go on. Again, we're working our way to the left. So 5 plus 9 is 14. So we write down the 4. We carry the 1. And then the last column, we've got 1 plus 1, which is equal to 2. And there we go. There is our final answer, 24,965. So the key with addition really is just making sure that you line up the numbers appropriately to get started, and then just be careful when you have to carry digits into the next column that you remember to do the carrying and then add those in as you find the sum for each column. All right, there's our first example. Let's go ahead and look at our next problem. This time let's switch over to subtraction. So we're going to find the difference for the following problem here. Again, difference is the fancy name for a subtraction problem answer. So when you see the word difference, think subtract. Just like addition, the key to setting up these problems when you have to do them by hand is to write them vertically and make sure that you align the columns starting along the right-hand side. So make sure the units column line up and the tens and the hundreds and the thousands and so on and so forth. Once you've got that, now we're going to go ahead and this time, instead of adding, we're going to subtract the values. So we're going to start with the units column and do 2 minus 0. 2 minus 0 is just 2, so we write that down. Then we go to the next column. 9 minus 2 equals 7, so there's that digit. Now the next column is where we start to run into a little bit of an issue because we have 6 and 9. 9's bigger than 6 and we really can't take away in this situation. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to borrow. Now what we would normally do is we'd borrow from the next column. So we'd borrow from the 0, but since it's 0, there's nothing to borrow from because it's 0. So we're going to go as far as we need to find a digit that we can borrow from. So we're going to go over to the 5, and we're going to borrow from the 5 and make that a 4. When we bring that across, what we're actually bringing across is a value of 10. So we want to work our way back towards the 6. So we're borrowing from the 5, and we're going to add that into the 0. Okay, so that 0 technically becomes a 10. Now we're trying to get to the hundreds column where the 6 is at. So we're going to borrow again. So we're going to borrow from the 10, and that's going to become a 9. And then the 10 is going to become 16. And again, what we're doing each time is we're borrowing a value of 10, not 1. We're borrowing a value of 10 each time. Now that we've done the borrowing, now we have a situation where we can subtract. We have 16 minus 9. So that's going to get us 7. In the next column, we've got 9 minus 8. So again, we don't have to worry. We've already done the borrowing, so we don't have to worry about it now. So 9 minus 8 is 1. And then finally, in the 10,000ths column, we've got 4, and then there's nothing in the bottom number, so it's 0. So 4 minus 0 is 4. And there we go. There's our final answer, 41,772. So the trick with subtraction really is the whole borrowing situation, that you're really careful when you are doing that you're making sure that you cross off the numbers and keep track of what the numbers become as you borrow. That's really the key thing, is being neat and organized when you're doing problems like this by hand. All right, so there's our subtraction example. Let's go ahead and look at another example. So in this problem, we're going to look at multiplication now. So we want to find the product for the following problem. And again, product is the fancy name for the answer to a multiplication problem. So you see product, think multiplication. And again, we're going to write our problem vertically rather than horizontally. So the way to do this is, we're not so worried about the alignment this time. It's not like addition and subtraction where the columns have to exactly line up, but it's usually a good idea to take the number with more digits and put that number on the top and the number with fewer digits on the bottom. It just makes the process a little bit easier. And then it's usually a good idea to then line up the units column and the tens column and the hundreds column, just because it's going to make it easier when we get to the next step after we do the multiplication piece. So to do this, what we need to do is we're going to multiply. And what we do is we start with the bottom digits, the 2 and the 6, and we're going to start with the 6. And we're going to take and multiply the 6 times each digit in the top number. All right, so we're going to take 6 times 3. That gets us 18. And again, we can't really write down 18. We've only got room for 1 digit, so we write down the 8 and we carry the 1 to the next column. Now here, because we're multiplying, we got to be careful with the number that we carried. What we do is we take 6 times 2, which gets us 12, and then we add the 1 that was carried. So 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13. We write down the 3, and we carry the 1 to the next column. Okay. And then we repeat the process. 6 times 6 this time is 36, plus the 1 that we carried is 37. And we can write down the 3 and the 7 because we're at the end. We can just add that or put those into the 2 columns that are available. Now that we've got our first, what we call partial product taken care of, now we need to repeat the process and do this for the 2 digit in this bottom number. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just cross off what I carried there so we don't get confused this time around. And we're going to repeat the process. We're going to take 2 times 3. Now notice that this time I've written down the 6 not in the first column but in the second column. So essentially what we do is, the more digits that you have, you write down the next partial product. You start underneath the digit that you're multiplying. So since we're using the 2 to multiply, we're putting the 6 underneath the 2 essentially in that same column. We're going to go ahead and repeat the multiplication. So now we're going to do 2 times 2, which is 4. Again, we're dealing with 1 digit numbers, so there's nothing to carry, so that's nice. 2 times 6 is 12, so we write that number down. And again, we're at the end, so we can just write down the 1 and the 2. Now that takes care of the multiplication piece. With multiplication, it gets us a couple of what we call, again, partial products. What we need to then do to get our final answer is we need to add these together, okay? So now it's just an addition problem. So in that first column, we've got 8 and then the empty space. We could put a 0 there if we wanted to. 8 plus 0 is 8. 3 plus 6 is 9. 7 plus 4 is 11. We write down the 1. We carry the other 1. Okay. And again, it's just like normal addition at this point. 1 plus 3 plus 2 is 6. And then finally, the last column, there's nothing in the top and then 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1. And there's our final answer, 16,198. All right, we got one more sample problem. We're going to do some division here to wrap up this video. So this time we're going to find the quotient of the given problem. And again, quotient is the fancy name for the answer to a division problem. So when we go ahead and divide, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write it in long division form. So we take the 324. We're going to use the division symbol, which is kind of the little curvy line and then the flat line across the top. And then we're going to put the 6 on the outside since that's what we're dividing by. It's called the divisor, is the fancy name for that. Now, to start this process, what we're going to do is we're going to start by dividing kind of one digit at a time. So we want to start by looking at the 6 and the 3, and we decide, can I divide 6 into 3? Will it go in there a certain number of times? In this case, 6 will not divide into 3. It's not big, 3 is not big enough to fit a whole 6 essentially. So what we're going to do is we're now going to look at the next set of digits. We're going to look at 32. And we say to ourselves, how many times can 6 go into 32? And what your goal is you want to figure out the number of times that will work that'll get you as close to 32 without going over. So in this case, 6 can go into 32 5 times. That's because 6 times 5 is 30 itself, and 30 is as close as we can get to 32, again, without going over. So we write the 5 down, and we write it down above the 2 because we're dividing into the 32, so we write it down above the 2. Now, once we've done that, we've kind of answered the next step. We multiply 6 times 5 and get 32 and write that down underneath. The next step then is to subtract. So we take 32 minus 30. So again, we're kind of ignoring the 4 right now. We're just focused on those first 2 digits. 32 minus 30 is 2. And we just follow the normal rules of subtraction when we do this. If you need to do some borrowing, you might potentially have to do that. In this case, we don't have to worry about that. After you subtract, the next step then is to bring down the next digit in the problem. So we're going to take that 4 and bring it down and kind of attach it after the 2. So now we've got 24. So those are the 4 steps in long division. We figure out how many times the outside number goes into your digit. We then multiply, then subtract, and then finally bring down. And now what we do is we repeat that process until we get to the end of our numbers. So this time we're going to do 6 and ask how many times 6 can go into 24. In this case, 4 times. 4 times 6 gets us exactly 24. Again, you want to get as close to 24 without going over. Then we're going to subtract, and that gets us a 0. Now, as far as bringing down goes, we've reached the end of our number, so there's nothing else to bring down. So this means we're finished. Now, the nice part is because we got 0 at the bottom, that means our remainder, or what's left over, is 0. That means 6 goes into 324 an even number of times. It goes into there 54 times. And so we don't have a remainder to worry about. And so we don't have to write that down. And so our final answer is simply just 454. And there we go. In your homework problems, you will do some problems that involve remainders. So if you have any questions about what to do in those situations, make sure to reach out and ask, and I'll be happy to help you out with that. All right, so there we go. Those are our example problems. We covered each type of arithmetic operation: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. If you have any questions, like always, please reach out and ask, and I'll be happy to help you out with those. Otherwise, thanks for watching this video. I hope the example problems are helpful and refresh your memory about basic arithmetic operations. And we will see you in the next video.